CEO, solopreneur for two businesses, Hunart's Fair Trade and Impact Storytelling for Results. I spent the first 31 years of my professional career practicing business law, writing contracts and advising a lot of entrepreneurs over the years. And I had no desire to be an entrepreneur myself. When I retired, I had no plans to start a business. I simply wanted to get back to my first love, which was about international connections and cross-cultural communication. I'd been a language major at UNM. I spent my junior year abroad in South America. When I was in law school, I spent a semester in Mexico City. I've traveled. That's where my heart has always been. And I just looked for an opportunity to connect with that community and started volunteering with a local organization here in Albuquerque, now known as Global Ties ABQ, that hosts short-term professional exchange delegations. And in 2013, we hosted our first delegation from Tajikistan. And like 99% of Americans, I had to quickly go look up where the heck is Tajikistan. For those of you who are curious, it's north of Afghanistan, west of China, south of Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, which is in turn south of Kazakhstan, and north of that is Russia. So you get an idea. We had that first delegation from Tajikistan, young professionals working with youth and civic engagement. And we were just so bowled over by their passion for making a difference at home that we stayed in touch, and we created a little Facebook page called Bridges to Tajikistan and a little bit of fundraising to support their efforts. So when the next opportunity to host another delegation from Tajikistan came around in 2014, people came to us and said, would you like to host another delegation from Tajikistan? And we said, of course, because not very many communities in the US have a pre-existing relationship with Tajikistan. And that delegation included a young man from Tajikistan who's the executive director of the Tourism Development Center of Tajikistan. He works in ecotourism and handicraft promotion, which it turns out are very closely tied in both Tajikistan and the other countries I ended up working with. I learned while he was here that no one in the US was working to build an audience, build a market in the US for Tajik handicrafts. As of that point, there had never been an artist from Tajikistan at the Santa Fe International Folk Art Market. So the result was at our farewell party, they were here for a week, in my living room, as we stood up, everybody individually stood up and gave a little farewell speech, both the delegates and the host team. And I heard myself say, well, I'll do it. I'll open the market for Tajik handicrafts. And thank God I didn't know what I didn't know. That was the introduction to entrepreneurship for me. And my second company, I started this spring because I realized that there are so many mission-driven entrepreneurs who just don't know how to market their goods and services. They get caught up in the online, what Brene Brown called the influencer industrial complex. And they need to back up and start over. And what I learned about storytelling and impact storytelling as a fair trade business can be applied to almost any entrepreneurial venture. So that's how I got started.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Would you like to take a go?
Sure. I'm Jared Tarbell. I am a native of Albuquerque, born here more than 50 years ago. I studied computer science down at New Mexico State University. And then most notably, I think I co-founded Etsy, the marketplace for handmade goods, in 2004, so 21 years ago. I went on to be a co-founder of Electric Playhouse here in Albuquerque. You might have been there. I was an early investor in Meow Wolf. I continue to program the computer. It's of great interest to me. And later in my career, now I'm studying the bizarre emergent properties of complex systems and working as an artist, which is why I started Etsy in the first place. Making art, and eBay was a terrible place to sell it. And so that's what prompted me to create that marketplace with some friends in New York. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to take that you just gave us, and I would love to ask you all about the creative aspects of your job. And I'm asking that because I think you all come from it from very different entry points. So you can just speak to what your entry point is into the creative aspect and how you are either being creative in your position or you are working with creatives. So if you want to just take that any direction you will, have at it. We can just keep going in order.
All right, so I just realized I didn't never said the full name of my company. It's Zoe Campace Outdoor Gear and Clothing Repair. That's my company. And because I love sewing and I love being creative and I love problem solving, and that serves me really well in this business because I don't really want to define myself as a seamstress because they make things from scratch. But what I do is kind of like a reverse engineer. I have to cut in the middle. I open it up and I figure out like, okay, from 10 to 0, I figure out how they start with 0. So I can reverse that while repairing this. And I love to add my, my art on it. I would like not just put like a simple patch on it. I would think about maybe I'll put like a mountain range on this patch. So make it special. So that's the physical work that my work is related with art. Also, I like to make reels, which is the little videos that you post on Instagram. Two of my reels got 800,000 views, which attract lots of attention to me, for me. Also, Patagonia also made a super short documentary for me. They released it last year about me and my passion about what I do. So these reels, I make them because it includes the process of me repairing each individual gear, and together with some wholesome message that related to life or repairing. My intention of making those reels is I want to share my passion, because the way most people think how I repair things is not at all how I repair things. My standard is the same or better than factory finish. It's unique you, it's one of a kind. That's after I repair it. So the video will like include how I do it and give you like a zoom in view of in my shop, me working in my shop and how much I love doing it, and spread the message of when you think it's a dead end, it's actually not. What I mean by that is when you think this piece of gear, oh, I love this jacket so much, but I think it's time to throw it away. But no, you just need to know me. I got you. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful feeling. And that's how I mix the creativity part in digital wise with what I do. Thank you.
I chose art as my second chapter world, not because I was myself a maker, although I did as a teenager and even up until law school, I did a lot of textile work, embroidery and knitting and crocheting and sewing. And then I got too busy. But art has always struck me as a fabulous medium for connecting people and having people recognize our common humanity and appreciate our beautiful diversity. And that it's the hook that connects people to start a conversation. And once you start a conversation, somebody stops being one of those people and turns into a human being. And that's what inspired me initially about using art as a connector. And over time, as I learned the stories of the artists I work with, I've now been working with several groups of master artisans in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan for almost 10 years. I began to learn more about their history and their cultural heritage and how art is both a source of identity and a cultural anchor for all of them. And a big part of my role has become the cultural ambassador for the artists I work with. But I've had to draw on that creative side, that right brain side I didn't think I had, being a lawyer all those years, to recognize that what sells in Central Asia may not sell in the US. And I've even become a co-designer with some of my artists on a number of products, working to figure out how we need to simplify, modify, redesign, but not lose the authenticity of the products that the artists I work with. And we'll talk about that creativity. Jared and I have already had a little conversation about the little fight we might have over the way Etsy is structured and what it means for an enterprise like mine.
Because we all like drama. That's why we're going to make it exciting. Yeah, creativity. So I think of creativity as this very unique human quality. When you are healthy and in a space with some resources, like what can you make? Everything that's around us these are things that people have made. And that realm, that world of creativity, it's sometimes godlike. So with the computer, I was introduced to the computer at a very young age because my dad was an engineer here at Sandia Labs, brought home a computer when I was 14. The only way you could use it was to learn how to program it, which he taught me. And I realized that here's a machine that you speak these words to, these magic words, and literally the machine takes those words and transforms them. And we all know the scale of something. If you can create a piece of software that's successful, almost overnight, that software can be on every computer around the world. So that's powerful. And that's for me, it's just exciting, like having that kind of power. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And actually, you're inspiring me to slip in a question that I was thinking about asking. It's something I always think about. My background is in dance performance. That's where I started. And I had a whole career as a dance performer. So I think a lot about embodiment in our businesses. And when you're talking about like creative being like really part of like our humanity, I would like to ask you about physicality in your practice, specifically because you're in digital arts. And we'll go ahead and take that question back down this way.
Yeah.
And just like what are your thoughts about being like a body in your creative business? Like, what does it mean,
Yeah.
right?
That's a great question. So the computer, what a miserable job being a computer programmer is, because you are basically sitting in front of this machine, typing away at these little keys and for hours at a time. and it can really wreck your health. And luckily, I'm married to this amazing woman, Lori, who's very much about embodiment and like, Jared, pay attention. You haven't gotten up from that chair for 3 hours. Go do something. Come outside with me. And that's super important, right? So, you know, later in my career, I've learned that these code can extend into machines like robotics and digital manufacturing processes. And that's what I'm doing here in Albuquerque at my levitated workshop downtown. I've got these machines that I can send instructions to. They cut out pieces for me. I put these pieces together. It's a very physical activity. And it's so important. And a lot of my programmer friends, I really have to pull them aside and say, you know, there's more to this than just the machine mind to meld.
As a lawyer, I spent most of my time at my desk writing. I practiced law largely pre-desktop time, so I had a secretary. So I had my recorder, my little cassette disc, or handwriting. And then I retired and started with the baby Mac, you know, the little Macintosh computer that had a 9-inch screen and 2 megabytes of RAM and
Awesome.
sort of taught myself along the way, but I still spend way too much time in front of the computer. And it's only through working with business coaches that I have finally realized that I actually need to integrate my body into my daily operations. So it's a daily practice now for me, but it requires an effort of will to do it, because I had many years trained to just focus on the brain side and the thinking side. And I'm now at an age where the parts are starting to squeak a little louder. And for the first time in my life, I have a regular exercise program. I do strength training. And I'm starting a little baby meditation practice I don't like to say balance. I like to say integrate, because balance for me feels like walking on a wall where you're at risk of falling off if you take a misstep, whereas integration is much more holistic.
Thank you, Zoe.
All right, I've been thinking really hard about this question. So this is how I understand it. I believe each of us we are all artists, whether you believe it or not. It's in us, it's in each one of us. Like the way you drink your tea, the way you fold your clothes, the way you start your morning. So if we're just be aware of what we're doing, you can find art in it, the way we express ourselves even. So whenever I receive like an item, I look at it, it's absolutely a piece of art. How it's constructed, how they put, you know, a zipper here or a drawstring there. There involves so much thoughts, like there's so many people behind it. Any great, what's the saying? Any great invention start with an idea, right? And that idea, I think that's art. Even the part that when my client come in and then how I interact with them, I think each interaction is also beautiful and full of love and art. Yeah, that's what I think.
So I'm going to take this and we're going to switch into that digital question now. So if my question is, and we'll start with you, Ricky, this time, if you don't mind. How are the digital and creative spaces colliding to propel your business? Because that's also a really important part of all of your work.
I've actually shifted my attitudes toward the digital world several times, actually, over the course of the last 10 years. When I started, I was of that generation that thought, oh, build a website and your clients will come. It was a shock to find out that it didn't actually happen that way. And then I met with a friend and colleague who said, oh, you need to be on Etsy. okay, I'll get on Etsy. And then I learned that I wasn't eligible to be on Etsy
Uh-oh.
because I am not the maker. I am not the creative designer or maker. So that platform was not available to me at all. And it's like, well, what the hell do I do now? And I started looking for shows. New Mexico is a rich cultural environment. We have the International Folk Art Market. We have shows. We have the rail yards. We have so many opportunities. Well, it turns out I'm not eligible for most of those either, because guess what? I'm not the maker. Even though the only reason I started the business was to support and empower artisans who do not have the financial wherewithal to come and represent their own work. So I shifted gears in a lot of ways to becoming the cultural ambassador for my artists, and that quickly delved into storytelling. So I developed a blog. I have my own YouTube channel. I'm a little behind. It turns out starting a new business, I'd forgotten it takes a lot of time, so I'm a little behind on my posting. But I started telling stories online, and then the pandemic hit. No shows whatsoever anywhere. And I dragged a couple of my artisans kicking and screaming online, and we did live real-time Zoom events during the pandemic, and they got comfortable speaking online. So we started doing live online events. And then the decision, there was so much demand from my audience that they wanted to go live to Central Asia. So I started doing in-person tours, but during the in-person tours, it was all about, well, no, it was not all about, but I squeezed in the opportunity to capture images and video that could then become the core of future storytelling. And to continue the story in my new business, I've also developed an online course on storytelling, because the access, we have such amazing global access now that people tend to turn first to the internet to discover what's out there. But I've also discovered that, particularly in the early stages of business, it's really all about building relationships. It's not about massive visibility. It's about building relationships. And you can do that online, but it actually takes a lot of work and a lot of time to do it online. So it's a combination of building in-person, face-to-face relationships and building online relationships through storytelling.
Jared, I feel like you're the natural follow-up there. Etsy.
What?
Do you want to take the question about creativity and the kind of the digital world and how that's propelling your business differently?
Sure. So I'm not really a part of Etsy anymore, I should say. I left the
I
company's.
forgive you.
Thank you. I left the company's day-to-day operations in 2011 with the birth of my first daughter, because I wanted to do that. I do have another business, the Levitated Toy Factory downtown, that I did spin up. And the idea was that I was going to use some of these generative algorithms that create pieces and create a company like Lego, where we do building kits and take advantage of 3D printers and laser cutters. But again, I really felt like every day I showed up, I was just running the circus. I'm not a very good business person. I'm much better at the creative technical aspect of things. And I naively thought that I could do the business and run it myself. It just didn't work. So I'm not the best person to ask for that. But I do believe in the power of these creative tools and partnering with the right people who can understand that and market it and find value there.
I feel like you're both really pointing to some of the challenges that we all have as creatives, right? And how we do patch through and become entrepreneurs in this
Yeah.
space.
It's why I come to events like this, to find those people. Yeah.
Zoe, would you like to answer?
Love to. So when we deal with exchange anything with a business, usually we forget behind the business there's a human there, and they also have feelings and all that, right? So in my shop, when people come over, I can interact with them one-on-one. It feels very, intimate. But then after I start having this reels posted on Instagram, I have a very, very big follower, I guess I can say. I want to, like Ricky said, the connection is most important. We always want to get to know the person behind your name tag, right? Behind the suit, who's there? That's why you ask your the cashier, like, hey, how's your day? Was it busy? Right? You want that connection. So so I make all of these videos and post it. I do it every single week. One day of a week, I allow myself to interact myself, my own workflow to, okay, where do I put camera now? And what steps should I record now? All of that, I think just so that I can build a connection with the people that I don't see in person. And that way I can show them in real life what I mean by patch it, don't trash it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. My next question is about locality. So we're in New Mexico. I suspect you have really interesting relationships to that because at least two of you are working internationally. Jared, maybe you can speak to this as well. But what are the advantages to being in New Mexico? What are the challenges? And if you want to open that up to how you're working in other spaces too, please feel free to do that. Zoe, would you like to take that one?
So for me, the previous panelist Adam mentioned, there's so many professional athletes come here or stop by here because our elevation is so good for training. So we actually have a really huge base of a very big outdoor community. And I really loved people here. I think people in New Mexico are one of the best. I mean, I've long road trips here and there, all the way to Squamish even, just to climb. But you get to know the people, you meet people, you interact with them, you get their energy. I still think people here are most supportive, friendly, and warm. So that combined with the big outdoor community feed my business very, very well. I'm so grateful for that. People make the state. So I'm so grateful to be here.
One of the things that I really appreciate about the New Mexico environment is we are a state of small and micro businesses. So there are a lot of resources available to support that category of businesses. I've taken advantage of many of them over the years. I've attended events at UNM in the past, developed UNM relationships. I've been a client of West. I've participated in SCORE mentoring. So the entrepreneurial environment generally, I think, is very supportive. But one of the gaps that I would identify based on my own experience is we're very good at starting a business, But that gap between your doors are open for business, but you don't really have a reliable client flow. There's a challenge in getting between that and the reliable income where you can start to think about scaling. And that's a gap that I think it would be very valuable for the resources that exist to focus on, because it takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of mindset shifts. Sales and marketing is huge, and unfortunately, the reality is social media has become a pay-to-play game unless you happen to have viral reels, but that's a rare bird. The typical person does not get the organic traffic they did when social media started. So there's a lot of training and work and collaboration that I think could come to the forefront to support that stage between, okay, I've got my LLC filed, I've got my bookkeeper, I've got my books, I set up my bank account, I have my city business, I understand the concepts, but I don't have any clients really. So how do I get them and where do I start? On the artistic side, what I talked about before, it turns out for me in particular, what I thought, because we were such a rich, supportive environment for the arts generally, that it would be an easy sell. Well, it turns out, as I said, I'm not eligible to participate in a lot of the lower cost opportunities. For example, the rail yards, I am not eligible to sell at the rail yards. So that limited my world of in-person shows. I've had to work to build connections outside the state, but I still I've received a lot of support from people within the textile arts community, which is very rich here in New Mexico. And I can't thank the state enough for the COVID loans that got me through the pandemic. I would have had to shut my doors entirely without that financial support. So we have a lot of support and resources, but there are still some gaps.
Thank you. Jared?
I think New Mexico is amazing. This is a very special place. I grew up here, so I didn't really realize it until I moved away or, went abroad to work and then came back. The diversity that we have here and the natural beauty just intrinsic to the state is amazing and pretty unique. Also, New Mexico is weird. There's weird things that happen here, like a magical quality to the nights. And we've got nuclear weapons, like the birthplace of nuclear weapons. We've got the UFO phenomena. It's prominent. And it's easy to laugh, but these are real things. And, it's easy to tap into that. You walk around in the desert at night. Those nights, like the full moon, this planetary alignment that's coming in just 4 days, like 7 planets in alignment. We're going to see it. In Washington, where I moved for a short time, you don't see the sky. There's trees, there's clouds. You just don't see it. So starting a business here is like riding your bike uphill. It's very hard. It's a lot easier to turn your bike around, lift up your feet, you kind of get to going. I think in New Mexico, really, it is like starting to ride your bike uphill. I don't know why. I'm not really a business person. I don't know what exactly that is. I think that there are, like with computer programming, these special words that you can write these amazing programs. There are legal documents that organize businesses in such a way that attract money, attract clients, attract interest. I saw this in New York. I was amazed at these documents that these men were drafting. And I know that we do that here. I mean, Drew is doing that with New Mexico Angels, and there is that magic here. I just don't think as many people have access to it as maybe need it.
It's very interesting. Thank you. We don't have a lot of time. I have more questions, but I wanted to give the opportunity to you all. If you wanted to ask the panelists a question, we could maybe do one or two. There's-
Thanks. Hi, Ernesto Villarini with the Community Development Venture Capital Alliance. Great panel, a lot of interesting information. My question, I represent an investor group. My question is based a little bit on the experience that I've had with other companies in this industry. And to me, it seems like entrepreneurs, particularly in this field, have the opportunity to add value to their company through the relationships that they form with other creatives and other artists. I think this is very evident in the music industry, and many other fields. So my question is related to that premise. How do you, within your company, look to add, value to the company's bottom line through those relationships? Is that part of your, actual business plan? Or is this just something, that you look towards in creating partnerships and collaborations, at the end of the day, it might benefit your company's bottom line, but it might not. At the end of the day, it might benefit you in the short term, but it could also be a long-term play. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on that premise.
Well, I'll take a stab at that. I would love to see more collaboration among entrepreneurs generally in New Mexico, and particularly in the arts field. I think that is one of the mindset challenges we have as a community, and that makes it so difficult to start a business and actually get traction in New Mexico. I do think we have sort of a collective scarcity conversation about we're a poor state, we have limited resources, we have so much poverty in New Mexico, so everybody needs to protect their tiny piece of the pie. What I love to do when the opportunity arises is to collaborate in any way that I can. For example, there's another Fair Trade Federation member in Albuquerque, Baskets of Africa. The founder of that company, Cale Chappell, has been my mentor from the very beginning, but we've done events together. We've supported each other. We've shared each other's content, announced each other's events. I think there's a lot of potential there, but part of it is that we have so many micro businesses in the arts arena that people are just trying to get through their day and get through their to-do list, and building those collaborative relationships takes time and creative thought, and often resources that we don't directly have access to.
I can speak to that just theoretically, because I live my life kind of like a wizard in the tower. But when computer programs that I write have network objects that are allowed to connect to each other, the objects that connect to the most others, the most connection, that's when the real activity and the real magic happens. So at a very fundamental level, I know that connectivity is key to thriving.
Thank you. We're at time, so I'm going to go ahead and call this the end. Thank you so much, Jared, Ricky, and Zoe. I really appreciate you. And thank you, UNM.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Brianna.